Okay, good afternoon, friends. Bruchim Abom to the Kollel Agra de Pirka Monday afternoon National Shir. Parshas Beshalach. We have amazing material today. Fasten your seatbelts. Brace yourselves for the splitting of the Yam Suf and the mystical way with which that was accomplished. We're going to learn today a subject that we've learned some of the fundamentals of, but now we take it to a new level. The Torah, in describing Pharaoh's chase after the Bnei Yisrael when we left Mitzrayim, the pasuk says, "Vayikach sheish me'os rechev bachur v'chol rechev Mitzrayim," and he took 600 choice chariots and all the chariots of Egypt. So the Arizal asks the following question. The Arizal asks, if he already took all the choicest, if he already took all the chariots of Egypt, why does it have to say, and he took 600 choice chariots? He took everything. It says, Kol Rechav Mitzrayim. Once he took Kol Rechav Mitzrayim, why say, Vayikach sheish me'os rechev bachur? He took everything. So then why the need to say sheish me'os? When the Beis HaMikdash stood, one of the mitzvahs that we fulfilled on Sukkot is the mitzvah of Arava. How would we fulfill the mitzvah of Arava? There was a place below in Yerushalayim. It's called Moitzi. And they would go down there. They would collect from there the Aravos, and they would attach it to the side of the Mizbeach with the heads of the Arava bent on top of the Mizbeach. They blew the shofar, and they would call out, Ana Hashem Hoishiana, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana, Rabbi Yehuda Omer. No, they wouldn't say Ana Hashem Hoishiana, Ana Hashem Hatzlichana. Instead, they said, Ani V'hoi Hoishiana. Fine, Ani V'hoi Hoishiana. What does it mean, Ani V'hoi Hoishiana? So Rashi says, Ana Hashem is the gematria of Ani V'hoi. Ani V'hoi is gematria 78, the same as Ana Hashem. So instead of saying Ana Hashem, they said Ani V'hoi. Ani V'hoi is gematria 78. But then Rashi brings another pshat, that Ani V'hoi are two of the 72 different names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. What does this mean, two of the 72 different names? We know, and we've spoken about this many times, that in this week's parasha, Perek Yud Daled, Psukim Yud Tes through Chaf Aleph, we have 3 consecutive Psukim that have 72 letters. Vayasa, Vayavoy, Vayet. Each of these 3 Psukim have 72 letters. And if we use a special mystical formula called Yosher, Hafuch, Yosher, which means we take the first letter of the first pasuk, that's a Vav. The last letter of the second pasuk, that's a Hey. The first letter of the third pasuk, that's a Vav, we get one name of Hashem. That's the first name of Hashem. The next, if you take, let's say, the 37th letter of the first pasuk, Aleph, the 37th to last of the second, Nun, the 37th of the third, Yud, you get Ani. Actually, because there's 72 different names, and the 72 different names can be broken up into 2 columns. Name number 1 is V'hoi. Name 37 is Ani. Those are the 2 head names of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ani V'hoi Hoishiana. Ani V'hoi Hoishiana. But actually, friends, what's amazing is, that means if there are a total of 72 different names, each one consisting of 3 letters, that means the full name of Hashem is 72 times 3, 216. Says Reb Yaakov Abi Chatzera, the grandfather of the Baba Sali, whose yahrzeit was yesterday, that of this, if you take all 72 names, they comprise together the full name of Hashem, which is 216 letters, and that is why on the Kohen Gadol, this was the 216 letter name of Hashem, was the name the Kohen Gadol would say on Yom HaKippurim when he would go into the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and the name of the area that he would go into is called Devir. That's why it's called Devir Kodshecha. Devir is Gematria 216, because it was in that location that the Kohen Gadol would mention the full 216 letter name of Hashem. So here we're learning something out of this world, that we've learned many times that the 72 letter name of Hashem is associated with Kriyas Yamsuf, but now we're learning that there's significance not just to the number 72, but 72 times 3 is 216. And 216 is the full name of Hashem, Devir Kodshecha. The Maram Shif, in his drashas at the end of Masechta Chulin, says with this we can understand the meaning of the pasuk, Vayikach sheish meos rechev bachur. Comes the Maram Shif, the great commentary on Shas, and he says the word meos could also be read meos. Vayikach sheish. Pharaoh took the number 6. Meos rechev. He took the letter 6 from the letter. From meaning ois could mean a word also. He took 6 from the word rechev. Rechev is 222. And if you subtract from 222, 6, you get 216. Pharaoh knew that the Yamsuf would be split with the 216 letter name of Hashem, the 3 consecutive psukim of 72, 72, 72. So Pharaoh wanted to counteract the power of sanctity of 216 L'Kedusha, so he counteracts it by utilizing 216 Betuma. Vayikach sheish. He took 6 me'ois rechev from the word rechev, which is 222. And you know what he's left with? Bachur. Bachur 216. Oyoy menorah. Since the Yamsuf was split with the 216 letter name of Hashem, so Pharaoh wanted to counteract the 216 letters of Kedusha. So what did he do? Vayikach sheish. He took 6. What did he take it from? Me'ois rechev. He took it from the word rechev. Rechev is 222. He took 6 from 222. He gets 216. Nishar, you're left with Bachur. Vayikach sheish me'ois rechev Bachur. Oyoy menorah, says the Maram Shif. By the way, that which the Maram Shif says that he's left with 216 in Tumah is very cryptic and concealed. But this commentary comes from the Arizal and the Shar HaKavanos, where the Ari, and also he brings it in Sefer HaLikutim, that Pharaoh knew that Klal Yisrael would be leaving Mitzrayim with the force of the Shem Ayin Beis, which has 216 letters. Therefore, Pharaoh came to counteract it with the Koyach HaTumah of 216. By taking 6 from 222, he's left with Bachur, and this name of Tumah went to battle Klal Yisrael. So what did HaKadosh Baruch Hu do to counteract Pharaoh? Hashem wants to now minimize 1 from the number of Pharaoh. Pharaoh has 6 less than Bachur, so Hashem is going to minimize Pharaoh's 216. How? Markavais Pharaoh v'chela yara vayam. Yara is 215. God took away 1 from Pharaoh's 216. He made it 215, and now Pharaoh doesn't have the capacity of 216 to counteract the Mitzrayim. Okay, here we go. Now, the purpose of Yetzias Mitzrayim is Maimin Har Sinai. That Moshe Rabbeinu brought down the Luchais, and Klal Yisrael was Makabel the Torah. If you look in the Yalkut Ruveni and Parshas Kisisa, each Luach had 108 Tfachim. The siman is Sham, Sam, Loi, Choik. Choik 108. Each Luach had 108 Tfachim. Total of 216 Tfachim. Keneged the 216 letters of the 72 different names that come from Hashem's special name. The siman is Vayavar Hashem al Panav. The word Vayavar has Ayin Beis 72 and Reish Yud Vav, which is 216. So we see that the luchos themselves are merames to the 216. Each luach had 116 tfachim. Together, they add up to 216. Therefore, the Yam Suf split through the number 216 in order for Klal Yisrael to receive the Torah. Furthermore, the pasuk says, "Toiri Shemai Yadi, Amar Oyev, Erdoif Asig, Achalek Shalal, Timla Emai Nafshi, Arik Charbi, Toiri Shemai Yadi." Menachem Mendel of Rimanov explains that Pharaoh thought that the splitting of the Yam was through Kishuf. Like the pasuk says, Vishalishim al kulai. The pasuk Toirishema Yadi says in Menachem Mendel of Rimanov, you could unscramble to read Shemois, Reish Yud Vav. Toirishema Yadi, Toirishema, Shemois, Shin Mem Vav Taf, and Reish Yud Vav. The name 216. Rabbeinu Yaakov Abi Chatzera, the Abir Yaakov, points out that in the introduction to Kriyas Yam Suf, the pasuk says 3 words that have 216 in it. Vayoisha Hashem bayom hahu es Yisrael miyam Mitzrayim. Vayar has Reish Yud Vav. Vayar Yisrael sayar agdoila, Reish Yud Vav. Vayiru ha'am es Hashem, Reish Yud Vav. These psukim, as an introduction to Kriyas Yam Suf, all have Reish Yud Vav in it. These words are merames to the word Reish Yud Vav. That's the name Hashem used to bring revenge to the Mitzrayim. Why does it say it 3 times? So it says Rabbi Yaakov Abi Chatzera, 216 times 3 is 648. Taf Reish Mem Ches, which are the letters Tacharim, to destroy, which God did to the Egyptians, and Tirachem, to have mercy, which God did to the Jewish people. So it comes out that Hashem redeemed the Jewish people, not just with the 72 names, but with the all-encompassing lettering of these 72 names, a total of 216. The Chassam Sofer brought in Oiros Chassam Sofer in Parshas Beshalach, on the pasuk, Vayomer el Amoy, Hinei am b'nei Yisrael, Rave atzum mimenu. The Chassam Sofer points out that the Rashi Tevos Am B'nei 72, Yisrael Rav Va'atzum, Rashi Tevos 216. So in the beginning of the Golus, Hashem was Makdim Refuah Tamaka, and He's Meichin the Geula to show that in the beginning of the Tzara already it's Merumaz 72, 216. Am B'nei 72, Yisrael Rav Va'atzum 216. Already by the Bris Ben Abasarim, it was Nispaser to Avram Avinu on the Golos Mitzrayim and the redemption. Like it says, Vayihi Hashemesh Ba'a Va'alata Haya V'hinei Sanur Ashan V'lapid Eish Asher Avar Bein HaGezarim Ha'ila. Comes the Megala Amukos, Parshas Lech Lecha, and he says the words Avar Bein HaGezarim is like Avar Ben Gizrei Yam Suf. It's like, it's a remez to L'goyzer Yam Suf L'gzarim. And there's also merames that Hashem split the Yam with the 72 letter name. Says Megala Amukos that we brought earlier, Pharaoh came with the Koyach HaTumah of 216. Pharaoh wanted to counteract. Hashem split the Yam with the 216 letters of the name. Pharaoh came to counteract that. So Megala Amukos has a little bit of a different spin on this. He says, originally the Mitzrayim enslaved Klal Yisrael with the Koyach HaTumah of 215 that comes from the Soifei Tevois Ki Ger Yia Zaracha. Ki Ger Yia. Ki Ger Yia is 215. And that was Nisbatel Lagamri at Kriyas Yam Suf, Yara Bayam. That was Mikayach, the Shem Ayin Beis, that has 216 words. In other words, in the world of the Megala Amukos, the battle was in the number 215. Namely, the Mitzrayim were Meshabed Klal Yisrael with the Koyach HaTumah Reish Yud Hey, and this came from the Shem Ayin Beis of 216 letters, but in other words, that Pharaoh enslaved us with Kiger Yia Zaracha, and the Koyach HaShibud was Nisbatel with Yara Bayam. So Pharaoh enslaved us with the number 215, and the Shibud was Nisbatel Yara Bayam. Furthermore, the Zohar says that by Avram Avinu, when he was traversing through the land of Israel, it says Vayavar Avram Ba'aretz. The Zohar says, why does it say Vayavar? Why not Vayelach? Says the Zohar, the word Vayavar is also merames to the Shem Ayin Beis. That was the Shem that was Niskala when Hashem was Megala, the Yud Gimel Midos Harachamim. Vayavar Avram Ba'aretz was is connected to Vayavar Hashem al Panav Vayikra. Here's another amazing reference to the 216. Does anybody know there's a mitzvah of challah in Masechta Challah Perek Aleph Mishnah Daled? How much dough is chayiv in challah? 5 quarters of kemach. What does that mean? Chameshes reva'im kemach, 1.25 kemach. What is the shear? The Rif says 43.2 eggs. 43.2 eggs. The Shach says gematria challah. Challah is 43, and the hay at the end is the chomesh. So 43.2. So think about it. The shir challah, 43.2. 43 and a fifth. The Sefer Seder Ta'amim says something amazing. We know that Hashem's name is 216 letters. How many fifths of challah is the shir challah? 43 plus 1. So how many fifths in 43? Well, 215 plus 0.2 plus another fifth. There are 216 fifths in the shir challah, which is also merames to the 216 letters of the Shem of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. You get it? 43.2 eggs, or 43 and a fifth eggs. That's 216 fifths of a beah. We brought earlier from the Arizal the pasuk Sus v'reichvai yara bayam. The horse and the chariot was thrown into the sea. That's a remez to the downfall of Pharaoh. The word yara are the letters Reish Yud Hey. Pharaoh came with the letter Reish Yud Vav, and Hashem took away from that 1 in order to throw him down. So he started off with 216. He took away 1 to go down to 215. So we know that in Baba Kama, when it talks about the Arba Avos Nazikim, Hashar, Habar, Hamave, V'ha'ever, it says by each one, Loi harezeh karezeh, v'loi harezeh karezeh. The Sefer Zuchus Avos of Rabbi Yaakov Finsi, in his Hakdama to Avos, says that these Arba Avos are a remez to the Koyach HaTumah. Therefore, it says by each one, Hare, to show that the Koyach HaTumah were Nismait, and they reach the minyan Reish Yud Hey. Okay. Furthermore, Chazal tell us in Bereshis Rabbah that Avram Avinu was Mekayim even Eruvei Chatzeros, like it says, Vayishmar Mishmarti Mitzvoisai Chukoisai V'soiroisai. Explains the Bnei Yissaschar the depth of the kavana of the meaning over here. The Bnei Yissaschar explains why was Abraham specifically observant in Eruvei Chatzeros. The Bnei Yissaschar says mystically, Avram Avinu knew how to be mechaber the spheroids Netzach and Hoid, which are called Batei HaChatzerim, the outer courtyards. And Eruv, again, Eruv is the letters Ayin Beis, 72, Reish Yud Vav, 216. So again, we see the connection of these special numbers to many of the mitzvahs that we have. The Gemara tells us in Psachim Kuf Yud Ches Amud Beis that Hashem wanted the Yam to spit out the Mitzrayim to the dry land so that the Bnei Yisrael should see them dead on the seashore. And God repaid them in the war against Sisera. Hashem, meaning Hashem repaid the Yam in the war of Sisera by paying the Yam 1.5 times overtime. How? With 900 chariots of Sisera. So in times of Pharaoh there were 600 chariots, and in the times of Sisera there were 900 chariots. So the downfall of Sisera was the completion of the downfall of the Mitzrayim. Says the Sefer Beis Aroin that al pi the Arizal we understand this calculation more compellingly. Pharaoh came with the number 216. Hashem was mavatel it by turning 216 into Yara Bayam, 215. This is Merumaz when Hashem told Pharaoh, Loi nishar ad echad, I'm going to take away one. That's why in the times of Sisera, it says, Vayipol kol machane Sisera lefi charav, Loi nishar ad echad, to juxtapose the fall of Sisera to the split of the Yam Suf, because through the fall of Sisera, Hashem paid the Sar Hayam. Meaning, why by the downfall of Sisera do we have this similar type of thing, this same lashon of Leinishar Ad Echad, because the downfall of Sisera was in a way the completion of Kriyas Yamsuf. But here's something we have to understand. We brought earlier in the name of the Arizal that which Pharaoh came with the Kayach of 216, we learned from Vayikach Sheish, he took 6, from the word Rechev. So from 222 he took away 6, and he was left with Bachur, he was left with 216. But if he only needed 216, why did he start with 222, knock it down 6, and then go to 216? If he only needed 216 to counteract 216 of Kedusha, so then let him start with 216. Why did he start with 222 and knock it down to 216 in the first place? So, Rav Nosson Gestetner explains this based on a Gemara in Psachim Kuf Yud Tes Amud Beis, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is destined to make a Suda for the tzaddikim on the day that Hashem will repay the Jewish people. After they eat and drink, they're going to give to bench to Avram Avinu, and Avram's going to say, I can't bench, Yishmael came from me. They're going to give to Yitzchak to bench. He's going to say, I can't, Esav came from me. They're going to say to Yaakov, bench. He says, I can't, I married 2 sisters. They're going to say, Moshe, bench. He says, no, I can't go into Eretz Yisrael. They're going to say to Yeshua, bench. He says, I can't, I never had a son. They're going to say to David, bench. He's going to say, yes, Ani avorech, v'li noel avorech, shenemar kois, Yeshuais, Esa. This shows that David is the one who's right to make a bracha on kois Yeshuais. The Gemara says in Yuma, on Ayin Vav and Aleph, how big is the kois of David? Koisi Rivaya. Rivaya. 221. Rivaya is Gematria 221. David's cup was 221 lug. Says Rav Nosson Gestetner that Pharaoh knew that Mitzrayim, Klal Yisrael, that the Geulas Mitzrayim is the predecessor of the Gula Hasidah, and the Malchus based David is going to be Mavarech on the Gula Asida with a cup of 221. So Pharaoh is coming to counteract the koyach of 221. That's why he took Rechev 222. He started with 222. Why did he start with 222? He's coming to counteract David's koyach HaGeul of 221. Because he thought Klal Yisrael was going to be worthy of the Gula Asida. But when he realized, they're not yet roy for the Gula Asida. They're only going out with 216. So therefore he was able to take away 6 from the 222 to get to 216 in order to be mevatel the 216 of Klal Yisrael. Meaning, after he realized that they were not going to be zoicha to the Gula Asida, he was able to take away 6 from 222 and go to 216. Now, the Rav Nosson Gestetner continues that la'asid lavai, they're going to say to David, Toil ubarech. They're going to say, take the koyach of 222 and be mevatel the rechev of Paroi. And they're going to say, B'choyreyam harakta. B'choyreyam is 222 you killed. U'b'charcha ga'alta. And you redeemed your koyach of 222. So now we're learning why Paroi began with 222. He thought he needed to be mevatel David's koyach of 221, but it turned out that he didn't need to do it, so he was able to chisel away at 6 of them. He only needed 216 to counteract the koyach that Klal Yisrael had of the Shem of Hashem of 216. But friends, we still need to think about what is the special designation of the number 216 that with the koyach of this minyan we left Mitzrayim. And I found an amazing explanation in the Sefer Yad David of Reb David Oppenheim, the Av Bezdin of Prague, at the end of Parshas Emor. He says, we find in Pirkei Rebbe Elazar, the Iker Shibud Galus was 216 years. Even though, by the way, there are many sources that we were in Mitzrayim 210 years, like the count Ridu 210, but that's if you count from when we actually went down to Mitzrayim. But, from the birth of Menashe and Ephraim, a certain level of subjugation began. And from the birth of Menashe and Ephraim, we were in Egypt 216 years. Wow. Now we're learning the significance of 216. Because even though until now, when you were in yeshiva, they told you 210, that's because you weren't ready to hear another sophisticated way of looking at it. But now that you've matured and you want to upgrade your understanding of Yetzias Mitzrayim, there was a number 216. So just to share with you, there are various numbers. There's a number 430 from the Bris Bein HaBesarim, 400 from the birth of Yitzchak, 216 from the birth of Menashe and Ephraim, 210 from when the Klal Yisrael went down to Mitzrayim, 117 from when Levi died, 86 from when Miriam was born. There are many different calculations. By the way, the Reb David Oppenheim, the Rav of Prague, who had one of the most extensive and important libraries in the world, he said that the heat of the Lechem HaPanim was preserved for 216 hours to commemorate the miracles of Yetzias Mitzrayim. Says the Yad David, now we understand the practice of Moshe Rabbeinu, why he first sent away Tzipora, his wife, and then he brought her back. And we'll also understand, a ger Mitzri is only asur for 3 generations, and then the ger Mitzri is mutter. Why? Says Reb David Oppenheim, how long is 1 generation? The Chizkuni says a generation is 72 years. Mispar Yamecha Amalei. Mispar Yamecha Amalei. So it comes out that Golus Mitzrayim, which was 216 years from the birth of Ephraim and Menashe, was for 3 generations. A generation is 72 years. 3 generations is 216. That's why a Ger Mitzri cannot come into the Kahal until 3 generations, because they subjugated us 3 generations, so we don't allow an Egyptian to come into our community for 3 generations, because Shibud Mitzrayim was Shalosh Dairos. Therefore, before we left Mitzrayim, Moshe was very nervous to stay with Tzipora. Tzipora was a 3rd generation from Hagar HaMitzras. Moshe thought that the stay in Mitzrayim would be longer. And if it would be longer, then we would be in Egypt 4 generations, and then Tzipora would be aser to him. So Moshe had to separate from Tzipora. He thought we would be there longer. It would be already a 4th generation. He would not be able to stay with Tzipora. But after he got word that they're leaving now, so Yisro sent back Tzipora. He says to Moshe, you could take her back. 3 generations are up. Says the Reb David Oppenheim, that's why we say in the Haggadah, V'ilu lo gal Hashem ha'isanu misham, harei anu ubaneinu uvnei baneinu mishabadim hayinu leFaroi, because we were in fact in Mitzrayim 216 years, 3 generations. Now, we know there's a famous principle that the events of the Exodus, the events of Yetzias Mitzrayim, were a pre-enactment, a precursor, a Masei Avos Siman Labanim, to the final redemption. We know the way that Hashem redeemed us from Mitzrayim is Pharaoh took away 6 from 222 to make it 216 to counteract our koyach of the name of Hashem of 216. So how did Hashem take us out of Mitzrayim? He minimized 216 of Pharaoh, Markavois Pharaoh Yara. He made it 215. The way Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim is He minimized Pharaoh by 1. So too, the Heilige Yismach Moshe says that La'asad Lavai, the way Hashem is going to take us out of Mitzrayim, is, we know the Samach Mem, his full name is Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, Gematria 131. The way Hashem is going to take us out of Mitzrayim, the way He's going to neutralize the Samach Mem will be parallel to how Hashem took us out of Egypt. Just like He took us out of Egypt by minimizing by 1, 216 to Yara 215, God will minimize the Samach Mem Aleph Lamed to just 130. This is Merumaz in the Navi Yeshaya. Hine Hashem roichev al av kal. Just like Hashem minimized Paroi from Bachur 216 to Yara, God will minimize the Samach Mem and He'll become 130. Rabbi Yisrael will end with the holy words of the Arizal, that if Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim with 216, you would think somewhere in the Haggadah there should be a remez that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim with the name 216. Says the Ari, sure enough, the gematria of the very first words of the Haggadah, you might be familiar with them. Ha lachma anya. You ever hear those words? Do they sound familiar? Ha lachma anya. The gematria of ha lachma anya is 216. 216. To be marames that Hashem took us out of Mitzrayim with the shame 216. Paroi tried to counteract that. Vayikach sheish. From where? Me'ois, from the word Rechev, 222, and he was left with Bachur, 216. Hashem said, get lost. I'm going to minimize you to Yara, to 215. Friends, these are some of the great treasures that lay beneath the surface of Yetzias Mitzrayim and Kriyas Yamsuf. And Bez Hashem, we should be Zoicha, Ki meit seischa me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu neflois, where Hashem should minimize the Samach Mem by 1, and then he becomes a fleeting Av Kal, Av 72, Kal 130 to minimize the Kayach of the Samach Mem. We should all be Zoicha, Ki meit seischa me'eretz Mitzrayim arenu neflois. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great day.